All right, can everybody see the presentation?
Yep, you're good to go.
All right, so I'm Adam Kantrovich. I am a faculty member at Clemson University, part of our agricultural sciences department, specifically our agribusiness, our ag econ and ag business program. I am the director of the Clemson Tax School, as well as assistant director for our agribusiness extension team. I have a 100% extension appointment, but still deal with a lot of kind of what people think of in their head for faculty, graduate students, and courses and all that other good stuff. So I'm going to start off with the beginning. Prior to me coming to Clemson University, I was with Michigan State University for a number of years, and in the mid-teens, we began seeing, due to dairy prices, a number of suicides and attempted suicides taking place within our farming communities, in particular within the dairy industry. At that time, some agency folks reached out to us, and myself, Roger Betts, and Suzanne Pish developed a program in response to this. Roger and I both having more of an agribusiness background. Suzanne Pish is a mental health professional, and we developed a program up there and a curricula that allowed us to provide programming to farmers as well as those that work with farmers. So dairy inspectors, FSA, farm financial institutions, etc. That program, after I left, was monetized and is being used across the country in various aspects. And so when I came down to Clemson University, South Carolina being no different than any other farm state, I wanted to begin a program similar to what we had up in Michigan. And so we began a program working with a number of others, and that program turned into what we were calling South Carolina AgriWellness. And we market the AgriWellness program, and the AgriWellness program has a number of legs to it. And the biggest thing is to raise awareness about stress and mental health challenges within our agricultural community. We train individuals and groups that work with farmers and farmers themselves. Depending on the group, we modify the program itself if it's a presentation part of the program. And so for some that may not fully understand, they may understand that farmers may be under more significant stress, but they really don't understand the details on what led to that. So we'll talk about that and actually give real world examples from a financial standpoint on why farmers are feeling stressed. And a little bit about the background of understanding agriculture and farming in general, and some of the normal day-to-day stressors, along with other variables that can come into play that begin to raise that stress level to new heights. And then we discuss signs and symptoms of potential mental health problems or stress, and that includes the physical, the physiological, as well as the mental. And given that a lot of the folks that we deal with, even if it's farmer to farmer, as many of you may know and understand, when somebody's under significant stress, it changes how they interact and what they can take in. So we also discuss how to communicate and how to respond with individuals in those particular situations, as well as we begin to discuss resources that are available to those. Okay. So in general, the program began with seed money from South Carolina Farm Bureau for us to begin programming. And so we began to provide those programs as I just stated. And again, one part of the program is, at least in the beginning, was the actual presentations to the different groups. And the other piece is the farm financial analysis. One of the things that many people don't realize, especially for farms and farming families, is they know they may be in a situation that the financial piece of this puts them into a precarious position on whether or not they can continue moving forward. And so we offer the opportunity to meet with myself or one of my team members to have a financial analysis done of the farm. And it begins to set up a plan for them to know exactly where they are at and potential options moving forward. That by itself, even if the outcome of that is not necessarily what they want, it helps them begin to think about their present situation and be able to develop a plan to move to the next step. And it's a big stress reliever to most of those farms, even though they know the outcome isn't really what is desired, but gives them a plan moving forward. Then the next part of the program began actually through part one, when we began to do some mental health first aid training. And we had the right people in the room. And part two was also started. Thank you, a big thank you and hats off to South Carolina Farm Bureau for willingness to put in additional money. Jeb Wilson from Cotton Hills Farm, who is a huge promoter of the program. And because of him, we have received additional funding because of a leadership program that he was in, our agribusiness team. And then we began to work with First Son EAP, which is an employee assistance program, and fully developed South Carolina AgriWellness. So we now have a 1-800 number that has crisis counselors to be able to deal with immediate potential situations. But through this, all they have to do, whoever calls up that number, and they state that they are calling as part of the South Carolina AgriWellness program, it immediately begins a different track within their system. I did 2 programs to train crisis counselors and mental health professionals that work with First Son EAP on the specific situations affecting farmers and rural families. And they can receive a minimum of 3 free counseling sessions with a mental health professional. They get to choose the manner for which those counseling sessions take place, whether it's virtual using Zoom or Skype or something similar. They can do it over the phone, or they can do it through texting. And what's interesting is counseling sessions through text are actually a week long. So 1 week long series equates to a counseling session, or they can choose to do it in person. And so First Son EAP will try to find the right person that matches up to that individual for the appropriate method of the interaction. Okay. We were able to go to what I'm calling part 3 through USDA grant, through the South Carolina Department of Ag. We worked with SCDA on that, along with Farm Bureau, First Son EAP, and others, to be able to really sustain and move the program to the next level. Given what Farm Bureau put in, it goes into an account, what they originally put in. And of course, that's limited funding. So this grant helps to be able to secure additional funding for that purpose. Myself and some of the mental health professionals at First Son EAP are going to be developing publications with some of that money that we can put out and hand out as well, that might have such things as how to deal with stress. There's a lot of already other information out there, but we also know that our clientele are more likely to be able to pull something in and review it and have it and take it, hold it, internalize it, if it has South Carolina directly reflected on that information. So we are going to be producing a few publications. It helps fund in-person and virtual programs, additional marketing of the program. And of course, one of the programs that a number of us that are on this call were a part of developing, we are purchasing a number of those, I'm not sure how to describe it, but essentially a coupon for mental health professionals to receive some credits and for our Pharm response program, where they will receive training on the issues of working with farm families. And so again, in fall of 19, the program was initiated. We established an advisory group in the fall of 2020, which I lead. It's made up of Jeb Wilson from a farmer's perspective. I have another extension person that is on that group, as well as some different Farm Bureau members and others, including South Carolina Department of Ag, and First Son EAP, and like I said, a few others. And in essence, to summarize it, it's an awareness. The collaborative effort introduces awareness programs, one-on-one farm financial planning consultations, the hotline for farmers. And what we've done is we've gone through attempting to train even other extension employees that may specialize in different areas: horticulture, agronomy, livestock, forages, etc., so that whenever they do a program, they can either play a video for the last 5 minutes, 10 minutes of the program, or we give them information and slide sets within PowerPoint to add into whatever their topic was, just to raise awareness about what's going on, mental health issues, the resources that are available, and the South Carolina AgriWellness 1-800 number. So here is what that looks like. 1-800 number, there's our logo, and anybody, all they have to do is dial 1-800, and we're going to be working actually with what AgriSafe is doing with their 1-800 number, so that if a South Carolina farmer or somebody part of our rural communities calls another number that's outside the state, that there'll be what I call a warm transfer over directly into our program as well. So again, another summarization of kind of what I've already talked about. We are continuing to work through a number of other pieces to this moving forward, and hopefully we'll be able to grow the program. We were slowed down a little bit because of COVID, but we're getting out of that and continuing to move forward. There is all of my contact information. I did have a QR code, but essentially the cheapness in me apparently only did and I looked it up just moments ago, I did a 14-day trial. So the 14 days ended. So I guess I'm going to have to pay for a normal service to develop QR codes. But there is a link to our larger agribusiness page. And you can go through there and find a number of the resources that we have, including on farm stress, mental health, as well as a number of other topics. And with that, I am done. I will stop sharing my screen. And if anybody has questions, I'd be more than happy to respond.
Thanks so much, Adam. And I want to just emphasize too that I think it's amazing. This is Natalie Roy. The First Son EAP, I just wrapped my head around that, because they're really a very unique partner in South Carolina. I mean, they make it possible for those mental health visits to happen. Can you just explain again how First Son EAP fits into the equation?
Yeah, so First Son EAP, what was interesting, at the very first mental health first aid, we did a 1.5 day training. This would be now almost 3 years ago, obviously, 2-3 years ago. And we happened to have Farm Bureau members there, extension personnel. We had a few farms, as well as a couple of agribusinesses. And one of the agribusinesses says, you know what would be a good idea? We actually have hired First Son EAP, and First Son EAP actually does, although they are predominantly geared towards crisis counseling and mental health sessions, they actually offer a lot more services than that I didn't get into, including, if I have an elderly parent that it's time I need to place them into assisted care living, they also offer those services. So our farmers can also make use of some of those services as well. And so they offer a lot more. And so what we did was we also found out that through them, and then working with First Son EAP, They are already engaged with a number of large organizations, financial institutions, and others within our agricultural community, including Farm Credit here in South Carolina and others. So we thought it was a perfect fit. We developed that relationship, began to work with them. The person that really runs and manages and oversees First Son EAP also has a very strong connection to rural communities and our farming communities, and was is very enthusiastic on the program itself and wanting to push forward with this, and to also help market the program. So it fit in really, really well to work with them. I'm not sure if that answered your question, Natalie, but that's about the gist of it from there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm sharing the screen of the website, and every state has something similar like First Son EAP, and they're not traditional partners that we think about sometimes. And so I just think that the partnership that's been created in the state is just so unique. And we did have a few questions come in, and
I will say that First Son EAP, if I'm not mistaken, they are licensed, et cetera, in multiple states. I'm not sure exactly what all those states are. And so if it might be worth investigating that. And so they also have mental health professionals that may be licensed in multiple states as well. So just something to consider and look at.
Thank you. There was a question that came in the chat, and also, folks, if you have questions for Adam, you can raise your hand, and we'll go ahead and unmute you. But one of the questions is, can you talk a little bit about how you found the counselors who were used for your projects?
Yeah, so that comes from multiple areas. I've had some counselors in particular that have reached out saying, "Listen, I'm willing to work with you, volunteer, do this or do that." I am not a mental health, what I call a mental health expert. Of course, I've had certain classes that I've had, but that does not make me a licensed and certified mental health expert. Although a lot of what I end up doing, I feel like a counselor when we get into succession planning, et cetera. And so, which was another reason to work with a organization, whether it be private, public, or otherwise, to help assist with that. And so they come through, the bulk of those individuals come through First Son EAP, because they have access to the necessities and what they have to do through federal regulation and state regulation to assess mental health professionals. And so a lot of that comes through First Son EAP. Others come from other healthcare organizations, groups, associations, et cetera, locally, as well as internally through Clemson University in this case. When I was at Michigan State University, we actually had mental health professionals on staff, part of extension, that was part of extension programming, which is how Suzanne Pish became involved. It was a perfect fit. She unfortunately is no longer working for Michigan State University. She works at a local school district now, closer to home for her. She came from a farm, grew up and was raised on a dairy farm. Her and her husband have a small farm. And so for us at the time when I was up at Michigan State, and I've even brought her down to South Carolina once or twice, she's able to interact with farmers in a way that many mental health professionals are not, because she's got the background, she's worked on the farm, lives on a farm, she knows how to interact with those folks. And so it was just a perfect marriage from that standpoint. She's very unique, and it's very difficult to find somebody with those credentials and that similar background.
Thank you again, Adam. And yeah, that would be like a dream come true, having mental health professionals as extension staff in every state, right? And we have some, there are a handful out there, but certainly increasing that would be pretty awesome. We do have a question here about, they said, "I see you indicate mental health focus. Are possible substance use disorder issues also addressed?"
Yes, they are.
And I don't know if that was a question for this group, or is that a question? That might be a question for the whole group, but do you want to speak to that about your particular program?
Yeah, so in our program, that obviously is integrated and ingrained within the programming. and it depends on the program and the amount of time. And so sometimes, like I said, the information has to be really cut back because it's more of awareness and getting out the phone number and what the resources are. So we cannot cover everything in a 10 or 15 minute period. When we start getting into our 60-minute, 90-minute programs and longer, that is dealt with. And obviously that is also dealt with as part of mental health first aid training. And one of our team members, Scott Mickey, is actually gone through the mental health first aid training so that we can now in-house do that training on our own. And I'm going to make an attempt as soon as time allows to go through that training as well, to begin to expand even on that, to provide that to our state FSA folks as well as our farm credit folks.
Thanks so much, Adam, for great explanation of what you all are doing in South Carolina. I hope folks connect with Adam. Adam, if you want to put your email back in that chat again, feel free to do that. We can also, if folks agree to sharing their information, we can go ahead and also share back a contact list with folks. Actually, if you put that in the chat, if you're interested in sharing your contacts with others, that will help us put a list together. Well, Carrie, do you want to go ahead next and introduce our next speaker?
I would love to. I would love to. So our next speaker is Jason Medows, founder of Ag State of Mind. And Jason and I both live in mid-Missouri. And up until about 6 months ago, when I decided to move, we actually lived about a mile apart from each other. And I've been a huge advocate and supporter of Jason because he is really trying to break the stigma of mental health in the farming community. And he has a PharmD to kind of back up what he is really advocating for. So I'm going to let Jason go ahead and take the floor, and I hope you guys enjoy.
Hello, everybody. I see quite a few familiar faces here, even some past guests of the podcast. So appreciate you all being here, and I appreciate being asked to come here today. Unlike Adam, I do not have a PowerPoint presentation, so you are stuck looking at my face for this entire time. So to kind of start off, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to the podcast. It is something, and I know that I have been on one of these AgriSafe calls before, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself here to any of you, but the background of my podcast is I kind of come from the mental health side from 3 different angles. First of all, I'm a cattleman. My dad owned a local livestock market here in Cuba, Missouri for 20 some years. Sold it when I was pretty young, but I still have quite a bit of memories of that place and the stresses that went along with it. And then, after that, my dad being a cow-calf producer, and then me continuing that and growing that and the stresses that come with that. Very, very familiar with that. Second, I'm a pharmacist. I have a very intimate point of view when it comes to the healthcare system. I have been I've been a pharmacist for 14 years now, and all of that I've worked in rural America. So I'm quite familiar with the health challenges that are presented here. And lastly, I am what I like to call myself a mental health survivor. I have suffered from anxiety dating back to when I first started college, and trying to improve on that going forward. And how the podcast got started is we had a tractor fire at our place whenever I was 8 hours away at a conference in Dallas. And I had realized it myself. We got through that tractor fire. Everything was fine. I was away from it. And I realized during that, after all had said and done, that I had improved myself so much. And I knew that there had to be other people who struggled similarly to me. So that was where kind of the idea of the podcast came. I wanted to reach out to others to kind of help them if they are struggling in a way similar to me. And mostly I wanted to have conversations around mental health in not just agriculture, but in rural America. As all of you know, there's a huge stigma that is surrounding that, and there's so much scarcity when it comes to real talk about that. And that's kind of the goal of my podcast, is to have real conversations with real people. I think sometimes we can get really lost in the stats and the graphs and the studies and that sort of thing. And I understand that those things are very valuable, but I wanted to provide my own unique point of view. And I think it's been really well received. We talk to people of all sorts of backgrounds, mental health professionals, extension agents, farmers and ranchers, people doing online things in a very similar way to which I am. It's just been a really incredible way for people to access information about mental health and some of the conversations and some of the better ideas that could possibly be had in this space. And and I want to be sure and mention that I am not a mental health professional, so I wouldn't ever say that that this podcast would substitute for any sort of mental health treatment. But what I like to say is I don't necessarily want to be where somebody ends up, but would love to be where somebody begins their journey. And and I think as far as podcasting is concerned, it is a really safe way for people to start that conversation. It's a really safe way for people to um, get these ideas and start the wheels turning a little bit. For so many people, there is such a fear, and it goes back to that stigma attacking once again. There's such a fear about them starting any sort of mental health treatment, whether it be therapy, whether it be medication, whatever it may be, even for them, even reaching out to a friend or a colleague, or even a hotline or anything like that. There's such a there People are scared for that for themselves. But what I hope to do is tell the story of people who have experienced these struggles firsthand, and talk about them. And we've just had some just really incredible conversations with some people who would absolutely surprise you at the work that they have done, the thoughts that they have had, and how they have improved those going forward. The first person that always come to mind when I talk about this is my friend by the name of Nathan Brown. He's from Hillsboro, Ohio. He's a farmer, first generation farmer. And I always point to his episode of my podcast, episode number 48, where we talk about all the things that he's done, all the ways that he has helped people. And it's just been so there's been so many people who have reached out to me and told me that podcast has helped them start their journey, or help them do some introspection, and reaching out and doing more and trying to improve themselves. And I can't say how much that means to both Nathan and I, that we were able to just have us. And what it is it's just a simple conversation between two really good friends, where just some ideas came out, and it's been really impactful. But as far as like what we talk about, I think a big thing we talk about is the access to resources. Where I think people sometimes they want to help, or they want to start to help, or they want to get the help for themselves, but they don't necessarily know where to start. And that's a big part of what I do, is try to bring people on the podcast where people can reach out to after they have heard the podcast. And I've been able to forge some really strong relationships, not just relationships of myself with someone else, but relationships that have stemmed from people connecting over my podcast. And that's really what it is about for me, is creating this sort of community that is helping people get the help. I know that sounds repetitive, but helping people, because I think a big part of not just agriculture, but all the things we do, it's about the relationships that we form, and being able to form strong relationships that will only help us improve our mental health around the board. So talking about all the people who are doing all the things and then putting them out there to the masses. And then we talk about what are the actual issues facing rural America, not just rural America, but within agriculture. One of the biggest things that I can say, and I talk about it often, and I hear other people talk about it often, and we're actually getting better at it, but I think we need to continue to improve, is the access to rural broadband. I think that might seem like a funny thing to talk about when in regards to mental health, but I mean, if you think about it, when we talk about accessing some of these telehealth or internet websites where it may not, because I think for so many people, farmers, ranchers, residents of rural America, they would love to go to therapy, but they don't want to drive sometimes 2, 3 hours to a mental health professional's office and have the risk of seeing their truck out front or whatever that may be. And that's, I hope to one day that never be an issue. But I mean, let's face it, it is an issue. But the fact that people can access mental health services from wherever they are utilizing broadband, that's a very powerful tool that can be utilized. But unfortunately, the lack of broadband internet in rural America, as I'm sure all of you know, is stifling. I am not, I'm rural, but I'm not that rural. I can see the interstate from my house. I can see it's 2 ridges over and can see the towers. And I just now got access to decent internet through one of the towers here. And it's been a struggle. And to think that I am someone who is, I mean, really not that rural. I'm an hour and a half southwest of St. Louis. What is somebody 3 hours outside of a major of a decent sized city in the sandhills of Nebraska going to do? So I mean, it's just that's one of the things that I like to highlight and like to talk about, that is a huge issue for us going forward. Misunderstanding of lifestyle. Again, I think we're doing a better job of this as people advocating for agriculture online, but we obviously need to continue to improve on that and do a better job and get our message out in front of people. And because I think, and I know for me, one of the biggest things that challenges my mental health as a ag producer is the fact that people may not understand what we do or think what we do is cruel or harmful. And what I'd like to do and like to highlight people doing is challenging that and showing their story. And excuse me, easy for me to say, ag advocacy is absolutely essential to improving the mental health of our producers. And then lastly, I think the biggest thing, and as far as I'm concerned, is the Rubicon when we talk about this sort of thing, is breaking down the stigma that is mental health in agriculture. And to me, I think it's a big step that even I am here today. I have a podcast that has 100+ episodes talking all about mental health and agriculture. I am someone who maybe at first sight would not seem like they would struggle. I'm doing very well for myself in my professional life. We have a very vibrant cow-calf operation. Things on the surface may seem that they are all fine and great for me, but I'm here to show you that everybody struggles. Everybody has something that they are struggling with. Everybody has something that they may need help from with time to time. And by, again, going back to what I talked about earlier, just sharing not only my story, but stories of everybody who I have on 100+ podcast episodes, proves that we all struggle differently. And I want to do my part in getting that message out there. And it's overwhelmingly positive, the response that I have to sharing all the stories with this. That was a big fear of mine, is the negative feedback that I may have. And I can tell you 99.9% of the feedback that I have had from my podcast has been overwhelmingly positive. There has been some pushback but it was at the very beginning. It was at the it's very minuscule now in the grand scheme of things. So I think getting out there, telling that story, and being able to tell the story of folks in agriculture and the struggles and the stresses that they go through on a day-to-day basis it's been so helpful for people. And I am so thankful for groups like AgriSafe who have helped my message get out there to more people and promote it. And people like Carrie, who has helped me so much along the way and shared her platform with me. And there's just been so many people who have helped me along the way. And I want to kind of pay it forward and bring as many people as I can to the platform that I have created. And to me, I always tell people that one of the greatest gifts they can give me is reaching out and asking to be a guest on my podcast. Because for me, getting started, I was super fearful of keeping content flowing. I think that's always any sort of media that you're in, whether it be a songwriter or a newscaster, or in my case, a podcaster, you have a fear of scarcity of content. But thankfully, that has never, even since the beginning of the podcast, I've never had that issue, and very thankful for that. So if you know of anyone or you want to be, I will gladly have a conversation with anyone. And you can, if you go back and look through my catalog of episodes, you will see that is a very diverse group of people who we talk to on the podcast. And again, I really appreciate you today. I told Carrie when she asked me to start to do this today that 10 to 15 minutes is an incredible challenge for me because I am very loquacious. I am very talky. Therefore, I have a podcast. So I hope I hit the post in 15 minutes. I promised myself I was going to start a timer on my phone. That didn't happen. So I hope I did okay with the time. I'm also thankful. Actually, I'm home. I tested positive for COVID. I'm fine. I have a little bit of issues at night. So I planned on coming to you from my work office, but I'm at my home office today. And thankfully I'm able to take care of cattle in the winter storm that's here. So appreciate the time today.
We appreciate you, Jason. Something you said there was, I feel that the fear of being scrutinized and being vulnerable is what keeps a lot of farmers and ranchers from talking about mental health. And now you've been doing the podcast for 3 or 4 years now. Is that right?
No, 2.5.
Oh, just 2.5. Okay.
Yeah, it started in September of 2019.
Okay. So in that short of time, have you seen any kind of shift in either how much it's coming to the forefront, or have farmers and ranchers been more accepting?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's become, I never thought you would see that sort of being a huge topic at like ag conferences and conventions and that sort of thing. And I've been very fortunate with the opportunity to speak at so many of these conferences, and whether it be in person or virtual, it's becoming, and again, it goes back, you'd be very surprised at the people who it resonates with. I was fortunate enough to speak at this year's Missouri Cattlemen's Association convention just a couple of weeks ago, and you would be surprised at the number of older 60-year-old cattlemen that come up and talk to me and share their stories and share their struggles and what hurts that and helps them and all that. And yeah, I mean, it's come to the forefront, and it's become where it's not such a taboo topic. Now, it doesn't mean that it's become easy to talk about, because it's really still not easy, but there's been so many people come along in the since I started the podcast, really, that have made it much more acceptable to come forward and talk about that. And I'm very grateful. I feel like my podcast came online at a very crucial time.
Yeah, I would have to second that. Vanessa said in the chat that they found in their survey that they conducted in Georgia that one of the big problems that they have in rural America is one, not knowing about the resources, not having the time to access them, or even how to. So it's something that you do is you try to share as many resources out there as possible, which is, part of why we've created this group. So how do you get your resources out there to everyone?
Oh, word of mouth really is the best way. Friends sharing it on the internet. Have I got to be careful here, because I also want to make sure that I stand for setting boundaries with my time as well, but being very accessible to people, whether it be in a live event or speaking on somebody else's podcast, having a always willing to be sharing that message without putting a burden on myself, if that makes any sense. Being able to share my story as much as is healthy for me, and just trying to just, and I think that I can look at the grand scheme of things, and it seemed like I'm not making a huge difference if you just look at the numbers and my downloads of my podcast versus how many farmers and ranchers, and even go further, even just residents of rural America there really are. It makes you seem like you aren't making even a dent in it. But what you have to focus on is the difference that you're making for those people who you do reach. That's a big part. That's like a big part of what keeps me going forward is, I may not reach a ton of people. I may not reach the agriculture industry as a whole. But what I can do is make a huge difference on those closest to me, on those who do consistently listen to the podcast day in and day out. And I think we can take a huge lesson with that, and we can make the biggest difference on the people who are closest to us. Start off in your community, start off in your local 4-H groups, your local FFA chapters, your local farm bureaus. Make this a point of topic for those local meetings, and then, like somebody just said in the chat, it's a ripple effect. It will continue to go out and out and out, and eventually hopefully get to the masses.
Yeah, absolutely. So everybody, there's your open invitation. If you want to get something that you're doing out, Jason is inviting you to his podcast. Jason, if you want to go ahead and put your contact information in the chat, and then maybe a link to your podcast so people can subscribe, that would be perfect. And then feel free to contact Jason with any questions that you have afterwards. And then we're going to let Natalie take it over.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Jason, for that time. And I think that this is the first time with this group that we've really done a more of a national invite. And so that's one of the things we didn't catch you up on, is you did come back when the AgriStress Response Group started about a year ago. We were in the southern region, and it was a group from universities and public health. And the group decided that that they wanted to be formed as the AgriStress Response Network. So it's a loosely formed group, very open. So the cool thing, Jason, for you is that all these people here are like maybe the ones that you haven't connected with, or potentially new folks that I hope will reach out to you and have some unique things to share on your podcast. So we definitely don't want you to run out of topics, and it sounds like that's not happening anytime soon. No. So definitely, again, those of you that are on, please think of Jason. And also, Jason, one of the things that you've helped us with significantly is you have to help AgriSafe think about our influence through podcasts, and what we can do to use that as a mechanism for health education. So Carrie, as you know, is the host of our Talking Total Farmer Health podcast series, and it does have mental health pieces. So your ripple effect is real, because you've helped us launch a podcast that we probably might not thought about. So I can't thank you enough for everything that you do. And I want to just make sure if there's any questions. While I'm scanning here to see if there's any more questions, when you mentioned about broadband, it's so easy to forget that when you live someplace that has it. But the cool thing is the folks that are on this meeting also are in positions where some of them are able to go back to their, some work for federal agencies and can say, look, this is the domino effect. When we don't have broadband issues and we can't connect people to mental health care, they may want to do teletherapy. Like, really helps a lot of the people, I believe, on this call to think about how they then communicate policy work and making sure that funding happens for good internet, because there's a long way to go. So I wouldn't be surprised if some people reach out to you and say, can you speak to that to some policymakers as well? Because they need to hear how this is limiting access to care.
Yeah, no, it absolutely. All my contact info is in the chat. Just be sure in my email, or if you do email me, that address is correct. I do not have an A in my last name. It's Medows. So somebody changed that. I think over on the boat over from England long ago. I don't know if it was a misspelling or an error, but it is how it is spelled now.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you so much. So let's just see, there's another message coming in. I'm gonna go ahead with just a few minutes we have left, just kind of give you guys a quick little highlight of what we're doing here at AgriSafe and why we're doing this meeting and what we hope for the future. And I know Carrie did a great job of opening that. And she is our ringleader with this group. She came on board. What, Carrie, has it been a couple months now? I've lost track. Probably feels like a couple years for you, right?
October. Yeah.
October. All right. Well, you're living like a lifer with us. So AgriSafe's growing in the space of mental health. We do have a full-time mental health professional, Tara Haskins. Many of you know her. But what we do really well, we think, is really elevate other folks and make sure they get out there and people know about them who are doing great work, like grassroots work. And that's what this group is about. And moving forward, we can't emphasize enough that the AgriStress Response Network monthly calls, when you looked at the slide that she had up before when we started, so innovations exchange. We want to hear about innovative work and bring it to people as quickly as possible so that you all can make connections outside and whatever that looks like. And if you do that, let us know, because that helps us know that what we're doing matters. This is not a federally funded initiative or monthly commitment. This is a commitment AgriSafe is making because we want to make sure that people know what each other's doing. We have the ability to do that through this virtual format. So please think about reaching out to Carrie if you would like to be a presenter the next time. You can see it's very informal. You're not required to have slides. We really want to be able to showcase a lot of innovation and even struggles. Like if you're stuck in a project and you're like, I just can't make the connections and move it forward, use this as a place to come even ask for help. So please know that Carrie is the contact for that. As far as AgriSafe, most of you know, we're working quite a bit in the mental health space. I will just briefly mention to you a couple things. So we did, let's see if I can get the screen up. Okay, y'all can see that screen where it says it's okay to ask for help. Am I showing the right? Ooh, it looks like my my Zoom quit. Hold on a second here. I am sorry. I have had, looks like my internet's cutting out. Can y'all see my screen? All right, let me shut my video off. That might help us out a little bit.
Yes, okay. Yes, we
y'all
can see it.
You see where it says it's okay to ask for help? Okay.
Yes.
So Monday, I'm losing track of my time here. Monday, we launched the crisis hotline, and this is at a Texas Pharm show, where this is the first time we have showcased and promoted the line. And we are running a hotline for Wyoming, Texas, Pennsylvania, and Virginia. And this line is a unique line. You'll see the numbers there, but what's important to remember is that only those states I mentioned are the ones that have contract with the line. But it's important to know that if someone does call that line, that number, if they're from California or Utah, doesn't matter, it will get service, because you cannot have a crisis line out there and not service the call. It's very dangerous to do that. And so every call will get answered, but we're not in a position, unfortunately, to be able to promote it and on a national level, because we just simply don't have the funds to do that. We have a handful of states that are piloting this, that believe in the model that we've been researching for a couple of years. Our hope is that we will be able to expand it as well. And the states that have started out, the 4 states, they all share the same number. Okay, so we're trying to make sure we keep that consistent, and that's what we'll do as we continue to add states to it. We're not in a huge rush to add states. We want to do this well. But AgriSafe is not actually the call center. We've outsourced that to a nonprofit leader in this space. And this is a customized line answered by people who are trained in the field of agricultural health and safety in a program called Pharm Response. And so it's a very intimate relationship we have with the call center. And so we'll be pulling metrics on it, but literally just launched on Monday. And we feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. We are really mindful that there are other lines out there, and we want to do whatever we can to not be seen as competing or confuse folks. So I just wanted to give you all an update on where we're at. And again, Monday was the first day that it did go live. If you're welcome to call it, if you want to check it out and see what it's about. But please let the caller know that so they don't feel like you might be in crisis, that you work with AgriSafe or you're interested in the line. But any questions about that particular?
Yeah, Natalie, there's a couple,
Sure.
basically the same
Sure.
questions
Sure.
in the chat is, how is the crisis line going to connect with the National Suicide Prevention Line 988 in July?
Yeah, great question. So glad you mentioned that. So the beauty of the line is that the same exact people who answer the line are also the ones that answer the lifeline number. They are the lifeline provider for Louisiana. They have to follow the same protocols. They actually not only cover the lifeline for Louisiana, but they also are the backup line for states. When people call that lifeline and the state doesn't pick up, they pick up that overflow. So we specifically designed this so that if whether the farmer calls 988 or they call this line, the exact same protocol is followed. So we don't have to worry about missing someone that might be at a suicide risk. The tricky thing will be making sure that we do what we can to promote 988, because that's really fabulous that we're going to 3 digits. So we're working on what that messaging looks like so we don't confuse a farmer. And certainly, we don't have all the answers on that yet, but I do want to let y'all know that we specifically designed this so that the farmer is getting the exact service they would get if they call 988 plus more, because they're getting the suicide assessment, but then they're getting an additional customized AgriSafe response. So it really is a unique program that way. But yes, we are going to be very careful about making sure we communicate that well. What we don't want someone to think is that our line can't assess for suicide risk, and absolutely it can. All right. And then I wanted to let y'all know too that we do have something called Pharm Response that we had to share off. That is, Adam mentioned it, and basically it's a 3.5-hour credit course, and it is going to launch February 18th, and it is going to be online and through our learning lab. And a lot of states have invested and paid for seats in advance, meaning that they want to make it free for health professionals. And so the purpose of the Pharm Response is specifically to help a health professional. It could be a physician assistant, nurse practitioner, social worker, mental health professional, help them get the information they need to understand why is agriculture stressful? Why is it a different occupation? What do the stressors look like? It's not meant to teach somebody about how to deliver mental health care. Okay, we're not teaching professionals how to do their job in that space. We're teaching them what they need to know about agriculture. So they don't, for example, tell a dairy farmer that maybe they should take a 2-week vacation, right? So this is specifically designed. It has a lot of authors behind it. Adam is one of them. And Carolyn, we have a lot of folks actually on the call that have been great. This is done through Articulate. It is going to be available February 18th. We finished the pilot testing. We've had peer reviews. It is going to, again, carry continued ed credit. So if this is something folks are interested in, please feel free to check back out on the 18th, because we'll certainly have it available for public use by then. But I just wanted to let folks know what the purpose of this is. It was geared for health professionals, catch them up to speed on agriculture. So that's all I wanted to share on that front. And we had a little time for me to do that because we did have one speaker that wasn't able to join us. But before we leave, let me see if there's any questions on chat. And Carrie, actually, I'd like you, Carrie, to finish up the to call to
Natalie,
and see. Go
can
ahead.
I give
Sure.
one shout out? And I
Oh,
didn't
sure.
name
Go
her
for
by
it.
name, but she's on here. And so I just want to say, Jessica Cabrera, that's now part of American Farm Bureau Federation, used to be with South Carolina Farm Bureau. And so she is also a wealth of knowledge to reach out to. If it was not for her, we would not have the programs that we have here in South Carolina. She was a main lead and a big push. And so I want to at least make sure that she receives some of that credit and acknowledgement, at least on my behalf. And I miss her here in South Carolina. So, Jessica, throw up your
Are you
info
sure you
out
don't want to
there.
come to DC, Adam?
It's kind of funny. I have received and been contacted by multiple farm bureaus over the last 3 weeks. And so I'm really enjoying winter weather here in South Carolina.
All right. Well, we thank each and every one of you for coming to our first meeting today. And we hope that you stay connected. The more we can stay connected and share resources, the easier our job is going to be, and just helping each other out. So we do hope that something happened with our meeting invite where one person declined and then it like canceled the whole meeting. So we hope we have that worked out. We'll check it in March, and just if you get a cancellation from me, that means we had to start all over and just redo the invite and make sure that it doesn't show up canceled. So if nobody else has anything that they would like to say, we'll go ahead and end the meeting and see you next month. And thank you all very much. Happy Wednesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks.